Hi everyone, so today I will be talking about Universal Design for Learning, also known as UDL. In this presentation, I will talk about what UDL is, where it stems from. I'll then go on to talk about the three principles of UDL, how these principles are applied in a classroom, and how the UDL framework can be used as an intervention for students with mild disabilities. The student population in the United States has become increasingly diverse over the past couple of years, and of course, increase in diversity in any classroom means there are more learning needs present, and teachers need to acknowledge the variety of learning needs that are present in their classrooms, and the curriculums and the way lessons are delivered should be designed in a way that foresees and minimizes any potential barriers to individual learning. And that is the primary goal of UDL. Universal Design for Learning is an educational framework based on research, and it guides the development of flexible learning environments that can accommodate individual learning differences. And this is achieved through three principles. Number one, providing students with multiple means of representation, providing students with multiple means of expression, and providing students with multiple means of engagement. So a quick history lesson where it all stemmed from, and it all started with this fella, an architect from North Carolina State University, Ron Mace, also known as the father of Universal Design. And he saw Universal Design as the creation of products and buildings that would appeal to all people and at the same time meet the requirements of the Americans with Disability Act. He established a framework for developing design standards that allow the greatest amount of access and usability to the widest range of individuals. And in 1984, researchers at CAST realized that some of the basic elements of universal design, such as its flexibility, its inclusiveness, its foresight in anticipating people's needs, could be applied in the field of education. And they found, just as it was helpful in the world of architecture and product design, UDL will help all students in a classroom, regardless of their abilities or disabilities. And over the following years, UDL was recognized and significant emphasis was put on it. So the UDL principles are broken up into three networks. The affective network, also known as the why of learning, the recognition network, the what of learning, and the strategic network, also known as the how of learning. And the goal of these three principles are to create learners who are purposeful and motivated, learners who are resourceful and knowledgeable, and learners who are strategic and goal-directed. Students are very different in what attracts their attention, engages their interests, and motivates them to learn. Some learners are highly engaged by their lessons being spontaneous and a lot of surprises. Whereas that can be very disengaging for another student. It can even scare them, and it's just a major turn-off, and they prefer a strict routine. Some learners might like working in groups, whereas others prefer to work on their own, and in many cases, the interest of the same learner can differ over time and circumstances. So it's really important to have alternative ways of keeping learners engaged in a classroom. These are the three UDL checkpoints for providing multiple means of engagement. Students are very different in the ways in which they perceive and comprehend information that is presented to them. There is not one way of representation that is going to work for every student in a class. For example, students with sensory disabilities such as blindness or deafness, students with learning disabilities such as dyslexia, or students with language or cultural differences, and so on and so forth, may all require different ways of approaching the lesson content. So providing options for representation is crucial in a classroom. These are the 3 UDL checkpoints for providing multiple means of representation. Again, students are very different in the ways that they navigate a learning environment and how they express what they know. For example, students with movement impairments, or those who struggle with strategic and organizational abilities, or those who have language barriers or cultural barriers, and so on and so forth, may all approach learning tasks very differently. And another example is a student with dyslexia might do very well expressing themselves verbally, but do terrible expressing themselves on paper. So these are all things that need to be taken into consideration when planning instructional delivery. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach, and providing options for multiple means of action and expression is a very important part of accessing learning. These are the 3 UDL checkpoints for providing multiple means of action and expression. And that is pretty much UDL in a nutshell. It's quite a difficult one to cover in such a short amount of time because there's just so much to it. But one thing I can say is, based on my readings and research, a lot of studies have been conducted testing the effectiveness of UDL-inspired instruction on students at elementary level all the way up to university level. And amongst the 3 journal articles I looked at, one looked at the impact of UDL inspired instruction on the behavior of elementary students with severe disabilities. Another one looked at the effects of UDL training on teachers, and the last one looked at the effects of UDL inspired instruction on a undergraduate class. And each one found that implementation of UDL had so many benefits, both from a student's perspective and a teacher's perspective. It accommodates all students' needs. It helps maximize all students' potential, and it personalizes learning, which are all great things. I don't think there's any downside to it from the student's perspective, but I guess maybe for teachers, it might be time-consuming. But again, the aspects of UDL you implement in your lessons will vary depending on your class every year. So yeah. I will have the 3 articles on the reference slide, just in case you want to check them out. If you have the time, I would recommend. They're great reads. And the next slide is just a short video showing UDL being practiced in a first grade math class. So I hope you enjoy it, and thank you very much for listening.
Doing a nice job of using physical manipulatives with the students, but also then using the language of math so that they can make the connections between the two.
So it is sort of both a cross-linguistic,
Right.
but also a non-linguistic representation, and multiple representations are what we're talking about here.
8, 9, 10. There were groups in which students were working in small groups, and there were children working independently on computers. There were 2 teachers in the classroom, and 1 teacher was actually working with a group supporting them. So many different methods were going on at that point.
There are multiple ways they're acting on numbers and acting on objects to count and all of those, so that they're not all the same. There's a good deal of variety in the ways in which a student can engage in the mathematics that she's concerned about.
I'm struck by the use of whiteboards. They are just everywhere in classrooms today. And she really seems to use that not only as an instructional tool, but as a tool to help support students' learning. So they're getting to use it. So that again is a really can be a very engaging new technology that's in our classrooms.